Red Bull's dominance so far this season is pretty much complete. So far, no one looks anywhere near Red Bull in terms of race pace. Reddit has started a Drivers and Constructors Championship without Red Bull in it, because with them included, it isn't a competition. No one is quite sure how they've done it, and we'll explain why that is later in the video. But first, George Russell reckons Red Bull are even faster than they're letting on at the moment. So, are Red Bull actually sandbagging 3 races into the season? Let's check it out. George Russell reckons Red Bull is holding back its Formula 1 car, and is almost embarrassed to unleash its full potential, after Max Verstappen continued his team's 100% winning start to 2023. Verstappen overcame a poor first lap in the Australian Grand Prix that dropped him behind the 2 Mercedes cars of Russell and Lewis Hamilton to score his second victory of the season. This is after he came from 15th to a very comfortable second in Saudi Arabia a few weeks earlier, and cruised to a comfortable victory at the season opener in Bahrain. Early in the race, it looked like Albert Park might suit the Mercedes, as George Russell led the race early without too much of a challenge from Hamilton and Verstappen. Hamilton having DRS from Russell meant that Verstappen's own DRS didn't give as big of an advantage as it normally would. He still put a huge amount of pressure on Hamilton, and when Russell got screwed by pitting behind the safety car that turned into a red flag, Hamilton had no defense against Verstappen. In Hamilton's words, Verstappen came sailing by with ease, the latest display of straight-line speed advantage that Mercedes boss Toto Wolff called mind-boggling, and showed a frightening turn of pace to turn a 0.5 second deficit one lap into a 2.1 second advantage the next. For sure they're holding back, Russell told BBC Radio 5 Live. They're almost embarrassed to show their full potential, because the faster they seem globally, the more the sport is going to try to hold them back somehow. Realistically, they probably have 7/10ths advantage over the rest of the field. I don't know what the pace difference looks like at the moment, but Max has got no reason to be pushing, and nor has Red Bull. They've done a really great job, we can't take that away, and we clearly have to up our game. His ending comment that they've done a really great job has been repeated up and down the paddock. It seems, for now at least, the rest of the field are begrudgingly admitting that they can't find anything illegal on the Red Bull. They really have just nailed the design brief given in the technical regulations. You might be wondering why no one else is copying them, or why we aren't just making a video titled, "This is why Red Bull are so fast." If we had any idea, we would be, but no one can work it out at the moment, and we'll explain why later. Let's first look at the claim that Red Bull are sandbagging to hide their actual speed, which might seem insane 3 races into the season, but it isn't like they need to go any faster, is it? It took Max just half a lap to open up a 2 and a bit second gap to Hamilton after overtaking after the first red flag restart. Red Bull team boss Christian Horner said the way Max built his lead instantly was exaggerated by a Hamilton mistake. But it was clear, as in the first 2 races, that the RB19 can display a much bigger advantage in the Grand Prix than it shows in qualifying. I think the very first lap of the race showed just how big an advantage Red Bull know they have. Max Verstappen seemed more than happy to just let George Russell and Lewis Hamilton pass him in the first few turns. There might not have been much he could do about George Russell down the inside into turn 1, but at turn 3, when Hamilton got him, he made the safe decision to run wide and save his car, rather than fight for the space he was entitled to on the outside line. I was quite careful, Verstappen admitted afterwards. I could have been a little bit more aggressive, but on the other hand, I didn't want to have any damage on my car, because I knew that we had a quick car, right? So even losing 1 or 2 spots was not the end of the world. The 2 laps after passing Hamilton offered a big glimpse of how much pace Verstappen held in reserve. They were 0.5 seconds and 0.75 seconds quicker respectively, and suddenly his opponent was at arm's length, and Verstappen was in cruise control. And after a mid-race virtual safety car period, he pulled away around 4/10ths a lap on average as he moved 11 seconds clear of the battle for second, a gap that was only cut into by a mistake under braking at the penultimate corner that sent the Red Bull briefly off track. There was absolutely no point in him pushing on the hard tyre once he had first place wrapped up. If it wasn't for the red flags at the end of the race, he would have driven the hard tyres that got fitted at the first restart all the way to the end of the race. There was no need for him to be any more than 10 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. In reality, Verstappen's afternoon drive around Albert Park was probably a pretty relaxing day's work, for him until the restarts anyway. More like a pleasure drive in his favourite sports car than a Formula 1 race. Horner did his best to shrug off Russell's suggestions of sandbagging. That's very generous of him, Horner countered. He'd know all too well from his team about those kinds of advantages. There's always an element of management that goes on in any race. Because it was a one-stop race, and a very early one-stop race, of course there was an element of tyre management going on. If Red Bull are sandbagging, it isn't anything new to Formula 1. Mercedes has admitted to doing exactly that in 2014. They were worried there would be a complete overreaction to its performance at the start of the new rules, and some enforced changes as a result. That was not an irrational reaction, especially as it's not exactly unheard of for F1 stakeholders to change the rules to try to break dominance. Likewise, it would not be a huge surprise if Red Bull is being prudent to some degree. Formula 1 doesn't need competition for race wins every single race to be entertaining. If it did, it would never have survived Mercedes' 7-year dominance. It definitely makes it more exciting when you aren't 99% sure you know who's going to win before the first free practice of the weekend though. Personally, I don't see the FIA stepping in. There's nothing obviously illegal with the RB19 that they could even target. Like Toto Wolff has said recently, they just did a great job and the other teams need to try harder. But how have they done such a great job? Why aren't we making videos with thumbnails circling side pods or wings with titles about why Red Bull are so fast? The reason is that no one knows. We know that their DRS is far more effective than the other teams, and there are theories as to why, but that still doesn't explain their pace without it. The truth is that there isn't one individual thing on the car that has made it this good. The entire car is just a masterpiece of Formula 1 engineering. Every single part seems to work seamlessly with each other. Their aero concept is designed to work perfectly with their chassis, creating a car with low drag but high downforce, good tyre management but still excellent straight line speed. For most teams, these are things you have to trade off. Decide to sacrifice the tyres a bit for better top speed, or be faster through the high-speed corners but losing time in the slow-speed sections. Red Bull don't really have to do that, at least not to the same extent as the rest of the field. We can't say why. We don't have a wind tunnel and CFD modelling software. We don't have a 3D model of their car to test with these tools either. What we do know is that they have a car that seems to be working in complete harmony. All you can do is say well done to the technical department, and take your hat off to Adrian Newey for heading an incredible design team. So, are Red Bull sandbagging? Do you think the FIA should step in with rule changes to try and reel in Red Bull? If so, why do you think they didn't do it to Mercedes at any point during their 8 years at the front of the grid? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.